So for the drums, I like to use the H comp from Waves because it has a nice smacky and warm and punchy sound to it. Now, as I said, for the shells, I like to compress before the EQ. So let's do the same as before. I solo the tracks first and then listen to the context, see what happens. So let's start off with some basic settings. Ratio 4:1. Let's put the I'll get to the punch in a minute. Let's start off with 40 milliseconds attack and 40 milliseconds release. Just the threshold. Wait. Yeah, this one raises the volume quite a bit, so I gotta pull it down. Now, the punch setting on this one, this you can set if it lets the transients detail through more precisely than without it. But sometimes I like to keep it at 0 because then with the attack time, I can also determine how much of the low end I want to let through. You know, because a lot of the low end on the kick happens exactly behind the initial peak hit thingy. And depending on how fast or slow you put it, you can kind of put a leash on your low end. And I very much like to do that. So see, with a very slow attack, there's a lot of low end going on. Now I'm gonna lower the attack and see what happens to the low end. And it flashes. Adjust the threshold accordingly. Of course, when you put it too fast, then your whole smack is pretty much gone. So you don't want to put the attack too fast. Okay, now let's go to the snare drum. Again, trust the H comp on the snare, put it before the EQ, and let's listen. For the snare, I like to put the punch high because especially this snare sounds a little weak on the body, and so I want to try to enhance the low end as possible. So let's see again. Let's start off with some basic settings. Alrighty. And now perhaps on the toms. Yeah, for the toms, I don't really want to add too much smack or too much punch with this compressor, but I want to let it act more like a, you could say, glue to keep the drums together. Makes it sound more like a unit. And now, context again. Okay, now you can see we're starting to peak pretty high. So when stuff like this happens, you just take your big buses and let's lower the volume. Also, it's not too bad when the meters go above 0 on your tracks. What's important is that your volume doesn't go above 0 on your master bus, because that means that it's too loud for your DAW and that it will start to clip. So this is more important here. Now, where should we head on to next? Let's go with the hi-hats. So with cymbal stuff, I don't like to compress too heavy. Let's... Yeah, this just gives the hi-hat a bit more smack. Okay, now let's go on with the overheads. Okay. Flat. Perhaps not compressed too hard. Let's make this a little slower. Alrighty, and now to the room mic. Here it gets interesting. Because the room mic, I like to squash a little bit with the compressor, because that can help to fatten up this whole drum sound a little bit more and give it more power. So power is what we want with the metal mix. And let's see. Of course, you gotta do it tastefully. And again, attack time and release time are very important. With the attack time, you can set how much smack you want, kind of, you know, how much of the transient you want to let through. And then with the release time, you can kind of set how squashed it sounds. Because when you put it really fast, it can sound a little more squashed because the compressor is working really fast and wobbling around. And when you put it a bit slower, then it sounds a bit more evened out. And it doesn't sound too funky. All right. Alrighty, that is that.